Hey there, looks like I'm going live. I've never done this before. I think that's a lie. So this is going to be, I guess, a sneak preview of the next episode of the Unstarving Musician. For those of you who care, yeah, I'm just getting ready to record the episode so you can hear all the crazy parts. Lately I've been doing the intro kind of live, and you know what, I think I'll go back and do that and just start with a little preamble. How's that? So I'm not recording yet, but I'm about to be, in Logic that is. So let's do the preamble and then go into the meat of the episode. And hopefully, let me do a quick test. Unstarving Musician 306 or 8 or something like that. Testing 1 2 1 2. I hear nothing. Let me see. Oh, okay. Output device. Let's fix that right up. Here we go. So I'm recording since I'm not, since I don't have a guest here. Well, sounds pretty good. When I do a solo episode, I just record directly into my DAW, which is, what is it? Logic Pro 10 or something like that. Logic Pro on a MacBook Pro. For you podcasting nerds, normally when I do an interview, which I don't do many of them lately, they'll be on Zoom and then I import separate audio tracks, one for me, one for the guest, into Logic Pro for you recording nerds. And all right, I'm not going to talk anymore about gear, so let's start with some preamble here. I think I'm good. Let me get this back just a tiny bit here. And if you notice the mic's kind of close to me, it's because the audio interface I use, I think the preamp is not quite strong enough, so I have to put this a little closer, which means I get a little pop on the microphone occasionally. All right, let's see here. We're set to record and go. So, big announcement from Apple Podcasts for the podcasting nerds among you. I know this isn't a podcast about podcasting, but you know I love podcasting and talking about podcasting when I can, so I'm going to talk about podcasting. But Apple Podcasts is now, has Apple Podcasts on the web. It was just an app, a mobile app, or an app on your computer, on your Mac. But now, Apple Podcasts on the web allows listeners to enjoy the full Apple Podcasts experience on any web browser, on any device. They can browse millions, that's you, can browse millions of podcasts across dozens of categories. You can purchase subscriptions to your favorite shows and more. So that's a big announcement from Apple Podcasts that I thought I would share. So for those of you that like listen to this on YouTube or like have been dying to listen to it, maybe doing it for the first time because they just don't do podcasts. So if browsers are kind of easy. So yeah, there's a way to do it. I also wanted to talk just for a moment about, before we get into the meat of today's episode, about an album I just discovered. It did release this year, and it's Mind Games, the Ultimate Collection. That's Mind Games based on John Lennon's big chart placing, I don't want to say chart topping, but big chart placing album Mind Games, which is really one of my favorites of his, and mostly because of that one track Mind Games, but there are some other tracks on there that are good. So this Ultimate Collection was produced by Sean Ono Lennon, his youngest son, who oversaw the production and creative direction. The Ultimate Collection is from the same audio team that worked on the critically acclaimed Imagine and John Lennon Plastic Ono Band Ultimate Collections, including triple Grammy Award-winning mixer engineer Paul Hicks, mixers engineer Sam Gannon, and mixer Rob Stevens. I didn't know any of those people. I do like the Imagine album, but I know who Sean Ono Lennon is for sure. He's kind of an interesting dude. And I just wanted to bring it up because I love this album. I first heard a super stripped down version of Mind Games. The album is sort of in 3 sections, no, 4 sections. So it's the Ultimate Collection, which are like these ultimate remixes, which sound great. And then there are these Elements mixes. I think they're called Elemental or Elements, Elemental, I believe. And they're super stripped down. Like imagine, Mind Games in this case has probably 3, maybe 4 instruments and his voice, which is amazing because the original track is kind of orchestral, and I love it. It gave me a great idea to do the song acoustically. So there's a tip for you musicians. If you're a big John Lennon fan, check that recording out because it's a great song that maybe you've never considered covering before. And then I forgot what they've called all these sections, but there's another section where they mixed in just a couple of instruments maybe, and I'm not kidding, it sounds in most cases like meditation music, which I think I learned John was into at the time. Sounds super cool. And then there's a section called Evolutions, I think, where you hear sort of conversations, and they weaved, the short bit of that I've listened to is they weave in the earliest of recordings into later recordings, all in like a single track, so you feel like you're listening to a single session when you actually are hearing the evolution of the song. Really cool stuff. And again, for me, most of this revolves around this one track, Mind Games, which is just one of my favorite of his. But man, I think they're actually going to release something that is going to be meditation based, and I am not surprised because I was driving around listening to some of these tracks with just the instruments only and just select instruments, and wow, it was something else. And then lastly, before we get into the episode, I wanted to tell you something exciting about Querétaro, my hometown now in Mexico. Fin del Mundo, an all-girl band, I hope they don't mind me saying that, from Argentina, are coming to Querétaro on September 21st, and they're going to be playing at Cerveceria Hercules. Julieta Heredia from Fin del Mundo was on the podcast. I don't have the date in front of me. It was a while back. It was a fun conversation, and I'm going to put a link to that conversation in the show notes, which will also lead you to, I believe, a video of theirs, a live performance of theirs. I just happened to notice they were in Mexico City recently, which made me ping Julieta, and in our conversation I found out they were coming to Querétaro because I was like, hey, any chance you guys can come here? I'll help make it happen if possible. And they already had a show booked, which is great. They have actual people working for them. They don't need some schmuck like me, podcaster, trying to get them a decent show. But I'm really excited to see them, and that's coming really, really soon. So there goes the evergreen facet of this episode. All right, so in this episode, I'm going to talk about, I'm going to dig deeper into the topic of touring, an area that I have been talking about a little bit lately. And if you're a subscriber to my Liner Notes newsletter, you saw some editions that were focused on touring. It's an area that I imagine some of you find both rewarding and challenging, or maddening, otherwise maddening. Maybe you've done it, maybe you stopped, maybe you're doing it, maybe you're about to start doing it. Me, I'm not exactly a seasoned road warrior. When I wrote the Liner Notes edition newsletter that was related to this topic, I had stated in there that I was only earlier this year on my first little mini tour here in Mexico. In that case, I was actually an organizer too, which I bet, well, I'm sure that a lot of you do organize these for yourself. This was organizing for a visiting musician from the United States, Johnny Bergen, who, if you've listened to this podcast before, you've heard me talk to and about, because we play together occasionally, which I met him through the podcast. We met through a mutual friend, we believe, George Brando, in California connected us, I think. We think. we couldn't even remember, but anyway, I realized in rereading my notes that I had done a little, another mini tour like decades ago in Dallas, well, actually Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma. And so that's my limited experience. But because, you know, I'm always looking to dig up some good things for you. So that's why I'm talking about this today. And that's my mission, right? To bring these kind of things up for you, and hopefully something valuable that you didn't already know or that you can apply to things you're already doing. So whether you're planning your first mini tour or looking to like level up your existing tour game, I've got a metric shit ton of tips and strategies to share with you here in this episode. And because it's a dense topic, I have included a list of recommended reading where you can find more in-depth coverage, and which brings me to a major shout out I want to make to one of those articles that will be in the recommended reading list, and it comes from indieonthemove.com. It was by a guest writer named Hudson Moore, who is a musician, and it was for a two-part series on tips for a successful tour, and it was originally posted apparently in digitaltourbus.com, so I guess a shout out to those guys too. But it's a great pair of articles, and there'll be a link to those in the show notes. And then also, I'm going to provide a condensed tour guide that you can actually download for free, and there will be a link in the show notes, obviously, and something that I hope you'll be able to use that just kind of has it all in writing as reminders. And soon I'll come up with a more in-depth version of that. So if you download the free one, you'll definitely get notified about the more dense one that I'm still working on. So the guide provides you, the touring guide that I'm talking about provides you with essential tips and like strategies for planning and executing successful tours. So again, whether you're embarking on the first mini tour or looking to enhance what you've got going on, they'll help you navigate the challenges and maximize the rewards of life on the road. Yeah, that said, you are always welcome and encouraged to ping me with questions or feedback. I love hearing from you, I really do. So I've heard many other podcasters say, when you send me a note, I'm reminded I'm not speaking to a vacuum. All right, so touring. So number one, plan your tour strategically. And this has been talked about on the podcast. I'm going to dig up the episode. I feel kind of bad because I want to mention the guy's name and maybe it'll come to me, but he really got me thinking about this, so about a couple of these points. So start with the best venues. So we're talking like theaters and major ticketed venues that require longer lead times. So start your planning there. And then the next tier is probably going to be planning house concerts around those other shows I just mentioned, which are kind of your anchor shows. Then you'll fill in dates with higher paying venues that need less advanced booking. And then finally, if you're going to do coffee shops and bars and things like that, be selective about, and I hate to pick on coffee shops and bars because I love coffee shops and I love bars and I actually enjoy playing them, but they might not contribute as much to profitability, and chances are really good that they're not going to. There will be some exceptions, and it kind of depends on how you take your show to those places too, as to how much they do contribute. But just be strategic, be thoughtful about how you book those. Create a balanced tour schedule, mixing in different types of venues. That'll be kind of for your own sanity, but also for catching different types of fans. And then be sure to leverage venue relationships for repeat bookings and recommendations. So schmoozing, right? Okay, number 2, you want to promote your tour well in advance on social media and with social media advertising if you know what you're doing. Because you may not have heard, or you maybe already know, you can blow through a lot of money really fast with social media advertising. And for the sake of keeping this as evergreen as possible, I was going to mention all the different platforms and where their relevance is. So I'm going to put that in the downloadable guide. But some of these are going to be here today, gone tomorrow, as hard as it might be to believe. And hopefully you haven't hinged your entire music career on one of them. Blah, blah, blah. Hopefully you aren't hinging your entire career or web presence on one social platform, because it'll happen. Something will happen, or is likely to. So what I do want to impress upon you is that different social networks are relevant for different demographics. So give that some thought. Think about who your demographic is, or what demographics you want to start tapping into or experimenting with tapping into. Some are great for younger audiences and viral potential. Some of them target music-related content viewers. Some will promote tour dates, will allow you to promote tour dates to your listeners, and there specifically, that includes some of the streaming services, the streaming music streaming services. So that's kind of an important thing to remember. And then some are useful for real-time engagement and last-minute pushes. Some of the social networks are. And then there are some musician or touring specific social sites that reach active concert goers. You want to think about that. There's one prominent network right now that's a great consideration for jazz, classical, or professional audiences, meaning the working stiffs. And then again, there are some that are really effective for younger audiences, especially with location filters. So that's a lot of stuff to really think about, and it's such a moving target. So if I talked about how all those things are currently relevant to specific social sites, social networks, it can change in a month's time easily. So again, in the downloadable guide, that will be updated periodically. You can see the social media network specifics on all those things there. Now, you have to maintain an active online presence when you're doing this. So that means posting regular content like behind the scenes stuff, teasers, fan interactions, and then responding promptly to comments and messages. I'm pretty good at that. The first one I mentioned is my challenge. I'm getting better at that too. And then use platform-specific features. You know that some of them these days rely on stories or like live streams like this one, challenges, polls, things like that. So just sort of stay on top, talk to your friends, talk to your peers about what's working for them, and think about those specific features. And collaborate with other artists or influencers. So there might be artists that are local to a town you're visiting that you could do some collaborative posting with, maybe some live things. Same thing with influencers. So you might have somebody, if I was gonna play in Fort Worth, Texas or something, there might be some influencer who's really big on what there is to do in Fort Worth on a given weekend or a given night of the week, and maybe even more specific, like where you can see great live music. That'd be a great person to collaborate with when you're visiting Fort Worth or whatever town you might be visiting. So look for those people and reach out to them. And be sure to share user-generated content, so from your gigs especially, but even your fans and supporters will even generate content or share content, and it's great for you to use that. They love it. It helps. They might expose you to a big social network of their own, so that's huge. It's a huge way to really connect deeper with your fans and make some new ones. And maintain a consistent posting schedule. Again, that's really important. All right, number 3, brand your tour. So give your tour a name, perhaps based on your latest album or some theme. Could be based on your latest single or whatever you want, instead of just announcing a generic list of dates, right? So some current day examples are Taylor Swift's Eras Tour or Coldplay's Music of the Spheres World Tour. Some really older ones, I just always have to mention the Rolling Stones. They had the Some Girls Tour. So yeah, branding it will make it a little more exciting, right? And along with releasing new music, if you've got that going on, and like new imaging for the brand of the tour, new merch, naming your tour will give your fans another exciting reason to come and see your show. So that's a big one. Update your set list between cities. So I remember when I was a kid, speaking of the Rolling Stones, that they did this. I went and saw the first time I saw them many years ago. They played two dates in a row at an outdoor stadium, and I went to both shows, and in the newspaper it had been said that there were some shows where they were playing this specific song and some shows they weren't. And I did go to both shows. I noticed they had 1 or 2 songs in the second show that weren't in the first, and they did play that infamous song. I think it was like Satisfaction or something, I don't know, which is probably one of my least favorite Stones songs, but it was something like that. So yeah, change Changing 2 to 4 songs between cities will help keep the shows unique, the experience unique, and can help generate a buzz like it did for the Rolling Stones, or like it does for Taylor Swift or bands like Coldplay, and keeps the interest in your tour higher. And doing this means keeping a record of your set list so that you can prepare something a bit different each time you're in a city or even like in neighboring cities, and it gives your biggest fans a noticeable, rare experience that they're really going to love. So, okay, number 4, be sure to offer pre-sale ticket discounts for the ticketed venues. You need to negotiate with venues to allow pre-sale discounts, or you may need to negotiate, you may not at all, because they may be totally hip to doing this. But you want to encourage early ticket purchases. Your goal as a touring artist is to sell as many tickets as possible. And a pre-sale discount of $5 off or whatever will give your fans another reason to purchase their ticket in advance. And so a little pro tip is to always check the contract, the venue contract, the show contract before you book, to make sure that the pre-sale ticket price is lower than the day of the show price. If it's not, you can ask your booking agent to make that adjustment for you. If that booking agent is you, then yes, you know what you need to do. Number 5, create VIP packages. This is also something I've talked about on the podcast specifically. So offer exclusive experiences at the shows, like meet and greets, private ones, early access, or signed merchandise for additional revenue. I had a whole newsletter, liner notes edition on this, and I learned some really cool stuff in asking other musicians and just researching it. So I think this is a really, really good idea. And by the way, all this stuff takes a lot of time. So I think, planning your tour in advance. The other thing is you can apply this stuff to shows you're already doing. You might be just like a weekend warrior playing shows every weekend in your town or every week. You can apply, I guess, most of these things to your shows. So if you hear me say something that you're not doing now, start working it in. It'll help increase your revenue, your fan base, all the good things. Okay, do strategic giveaways. So things like using complimentary tickets to attract new fans, and you can collaborate with local influencers and businesses for promotions like this when you're on tour, or even if you're just doing local stuff in your town. So think about ways that you can do very strategic giveaways. Your fans will dig that. Book local openers is number 7 on my list here. So find artists who align with your style and who draw a crowd, and consider, book them at your show, and consider reciprocating in your hometown. That's, I think, widely known as like gig swapping. So when you're in town, find somebody who looks like a good fit for your show and try to get them as an opening act. And then, or maybe you'll be an opening act for them, depends. And then let them know next time they're in your town, or if they want to come, that you can help set something up like that for them. Okay, now number 8, you need to know your markets when you're doing the whole tour thing, or even when you're playing locally, right? So that means you need to be aware of competing events. This is pretty important, actually. Be aware of competing events and adjust your show times if necessary. I'm remembering a time I was playing in San Jose, and I wasn't on a big tour or anything. I was doing like a regular gig, but there was I don't remember if it was U2 or Tom Petty was in town. And we would adjust, because the venue was actually in proximity to the venue where a lot of major concerts came through. The smaller venue that I was playing at adjusted our performance schedule so that we could catch some of the outgoing traffic from that show. And sometimes it might be the inbound traffic, like people who are going to go have a drink on the way to the show, or a bite to eat on the way to the show. So think about adjusting your times accordingly, and more importantly, just being aware when those events are happening. Okay, so let's talk about marketing and promotion. So number 1 on this part of touring is leverage local media and influencers. Reach out to local radio, newspapers, bloggers, social media influencers, and collaborate with them especially the ones that are in your genre or that are doing something specific that is relevant to the show, the town, the theme of your album, whatever you can think of. Now, in the Department of Marketing and Promotion, you have got to do effective email marketing too. So that means you want to get a little advanced here, okay? So that means using geographical targeting. So you want to let people know when you're coming to their town. You don't need to let your entire list know that you're touring in Ohio, or you're going to pass through Ohio, or Cincinnati, or people in Arlington, Texas might not care. So, but definitely let those folks know when you're getting closer to them. And then implement drip campaigns. So this is just kind of writing some stuff up in advance and letting it drip out, so to speak, to the would-be attendees of your tour. And try to create scarcity, limited seating, one show only, whatever you can think of. You can also A/B or test your emails. This will often be just an A/B test of your subject line if your list is big enough to do that, to find out which one does better for you, because one subject line may equal $500 more in ticket sales. So that's definitely the one you want to go with next time. So it's good to do these, do A/B testing as often as you can. And then be sure to share live performance clips in your email marketing. And I want to encourage you to consider using ConvertKit email for your email service provider, your email marketing service provider. They really love musicians, they love creators, and I can't say enough about it. As a podcaster and musician, they've really helped me grow my list too. They've got this great thing called the Creators Network, which it's out of the scope of this episode, but if you want to know more about it, you know where to find me. I will also put a link to, I'll put a couple of links in the show notes, and I'm actually going to make a note right now. So ConvertKit and ConvertKit Creator Network. And I'm not kidding when I say they helped me grow my list. They made they helped me make a big jump in the number of subscribers. And my open rate is still good. My unsubscribe rate is still very low. My engagement is good, so I'm giddy about that. Let's see. I am. Oh, by the way, I am a ConvertKit affiliate. So if you use a link that I put in the show notes, I'll get a small commission, but that won't cost you anything extra. And I thank you for your support. All right, number 3, utilize video content. So create geotagged content on some of the platforms that allow you to do that, so that the right people will see it first, are especially likely to see it. And also know that as this video, short form video, and this is sadly probably not going to change, but short form video users are 38% more likely to attend concerts. That's interesting. That's an interesting little stat. All right. Target specific audiences when you're doing all of this. So gamers are more likely to buy music merch. Isn't that interesting? And they may be completely out of your wheelhouse, in which case you can ignore that. But hey, it's something interesting for you to know. And Gen Z, those 15 to 27-year-old losers, I'm just kidding, you guys are not losers. They actually attend the most live concerts as of this recording. And the source for that information comes from Luminate, formerly Nielsen Music. It was a 2024 mid-year music report. We'll put, I don't know if I have that noted as something to put in the show notes. But you know what? I'm not going to, if it's not already there, because that report covers a lot of stuff, and I think goes well beyond the scope of what we're talking about here, and maybe even the scope of the things you normally care to think about. However, if you do want it, you know where to find me. And if you're a subscriber to Liner Notes, you have it already. And if you lost it and want to know where that is, and you're a subscriber, let me know, and I will. I'll resend that email to you. All right. You need to prioritize your mental health when you're on tour, right? That's the one thing I think I would be challenged with. Touring, man, I don't think it's for me. It's funny. Something you dream about when you're young, or I did. But in my limited experience, I'm like, I don't think it's for me. Not doing it all the time. It's fun to do once in a while. But so, do things like practice relaxation techniques, exercising outdoors, journaling, and by all means, look for support if you need it. Hell, you can even call me. All right, you need to think about, outside of that, you need to think about maximizing your merchandise sales. So some things you can do there are offer a varied line of merchandise, and include tour specific and limited edition items. And I believe I've done a whole episode on merch, but we could go deeper, but just really pay some attention to it, be prepared, look at what's selling, have some good signage, have a strategy for being at the merch table when you're at your gigs. Just have a strategy for having your merch there and prominently, beautifully displayed. Get some help if you can too. And then you also want to connect with fans, go out of your way to connect with fans. So meet them after the shows, take photos, sign autographs, and collect email addresses, please. I've been thinking a lot about, for those of you who maybe, I don't know if it's that big I really don't think it's as big in the US, but if you're traveling outside the US, the rest of the world is pretty big on WhatsApp. I know the US has come around or coming around to it, but I've been thinking a lot about, I said I wasn't going to be social network specific, so let me back up a little bit. It doesn't have to be WhatsApp, but anything that is more along the lines of a messaging service, even if it's SMS, think about creating groups there. I think it's a good strategy to offer that and email. It's one more thing, but you're basically going to be sending the same content or maybe a more condensed version of your emails to a messaging service. And I think a lot of people will be willing to do that who may not be as willing to share their email for various reasons. All right, number 4 in this section is take care of your band. So show appreciation for them through small gestures like movie nights or meals or walks in the park together. No, whatever. Yeah, movie nights are actually great. Foosball night, table tennis night, I don't know. Be creative, do stuff together, treat them to something. And extend that to the people that you work with at the venues too. I'm not sure, yeah, I do have that in here, be kind to venue staff. But let me, I guess I kind of skipped around here. Well, no, let's just lump it in. Be kind to venue staff while you're at it. So introduce yourself to all the staff. Provide clear instructions for sound and lighting. That's something you may not think about a lot. But just remember that this is super, super important. And this is the entire staff. You never know who among the staff is influential, all right? So don't just keep it limited to the cute bartender. And then record and review your shows. This is a good one. It's something I had never really given a lot of thought to, but I know people have done it. So you can use these recordings to improve performances and create promotional content. That, my friends, is what we call repurposing. But you can take notes, you can go over these things with the band and just make it better. See what works really well and what fell a little flat. All right, here's some financial considerations, and we're closing in on the end of this discussion. I want you to explore sponsorships. In doing so, you're going to identify brands that align with your image and your values, that jive with your general vibe, and look to them to sponsor tours or shows in any way that they can. This can make a big difference, and sometimes it can make a huge difference. I had at least one episode that comes to mind with a young woman named Alyssa Trahan out of Nashville, and she started leveraging sponsorships at a really young age, and they've done well. I mean, they've helped fund really well done videos for her. I know she has instrument endorsement things, and then she has sponsors for shows and tours. So definitely worth looking at. It's an episode worth listening to. I'll make myself a quick note here to put Alyssa Trahan's episode. Let's see here. Alyssa Trahan. We'll put her episode in the show notes in case you'd like to listen to that. And let's see, where am I? Okay. Leverage digital content. Here's another financial consideration. So, offer premium content and use live streams to engage fans, like I'm doing today, I hope. And create additional revenue by doing that. These things, today, these can take a while, so if you don't have a following, you have to get focused on offering great content so that you can develop a following and work on some of these marketing tactics we've talked about today and ones that are even more specific to leveraging digital content, but they can help you engage with more people and create some additional revenue in time. All right, so kind of wrapping all this up, remember to adapt these tips to your specific situation. By using these strategies from the list that I just gave you, you can make a substantial difference in your touring revenue. And I know how it is. I've talked to enough of you, and actually because of my limited experience, I mean, you're out there trying to get new fans, get your music out there, and you're happy to break even, right? Even though you want to make money. And some of us are not happy to break even, and that includes me. So anyway, do these things to increase your touring revenue, and do them to increase your local show revenue too. A lot of this stuff totally applies. All right, so that's it. Please check out the show notes if there was something I mentioned that would be of interest to you. If you love this podcast, please consider leaving us a review or just send me a nice note, and I'll use it as a testimonial on the website, which also has a big bang. Or if that's too much time for you, I understand. Just share it with a friend. That would be amazing. All right, until next time. You've been watching the Unstarving Musician Podcast live stream. I hope you've had a good time. Be sure to click that subscribe button. Actually, this is not the Unstarving Musician YouTube channel. This is my kind of personal YouTube channel, but I post things on here. The Unstarving Musician has a YouTube channel dedicated to podcast episodes, and it's at Unstarving Musician. So anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know.